Boss, we're rolling. Like I said, I'm going to give you the reins. You steer this wherever you want to go.
Do my best.
We'll start off, I guess. Who are you?
I'm Nicole. I'm an ADHD coach. My background is primarily in education. That's what my master's is in. I was a behavioral interventionist for children on the autism spectrum for a number of years. From then I went on to work with adolescents with Asperger's, autism, ADHD, the whole neurodevelopmental field. From there, I sidetracked professionally into addiction, and I went and studied under a double board certified neuropsychologist in the trauma and neuroscience of addiction, which ties in nicely with ADHD as it is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So that's what I do. And I do my private practice.
Holy shit. Right. Okay. That's a lot to unravel. Okay. I'm blonde, you see, I've got to go real slow. So okay. let's start off with the ADHD thing.
Yeah.
Right. So how did you get into that? What does that entail? How did you study? What is that exactly in layman's terms?
Well, ADHD, I have ADHD, which is how I really got into it on my own personal journey, figuring out what that was, because there's still a lot of misinformation out there about what it is and what it entails, whether adults can have it, whether it's caused by bad parenting, which is an absolute myth. It's a brain issue. We have a diminished prefrontal cortex, the part that's in charge of things like decision making and impulse control and stuff like that, and it affects our daily life. We basically have this kind of disconnect in different parts of our brains. So we operate and think a little bit differently than neurotypicals, which is what we call people that aren't neurodiverse.
Wow, neurotypical and neurodiverse. Sounds like something out of Divergent. Have you seen that series of movies?
I have not.
I'm not obsessed with it. I think it's great.
Okay.
But, that's some homework. Watch some movies.
Yeah.
On all those flights you're going to be taking.
I know. Yeah. Well, ADHD, it's interesting because it's still kind of a new field, unfortunately. It's just in the last 10 years that adults having ADHD was finally recognized in the DSM-5. So there's still a lot of things coming out and a lot of misinformation. So it's kind of important, and it's my whole philosophy to kind of break stigma and help people realize that ADHD does not equal laziness. It has nothing to do with intelligence, nothing like that. Our brains just work a bit differently, and we can fully function and thrive in the world. We just kind of have to, alter the way we do things just a little bit. So, yeah.
It's quite crazy, right? Because, we see people's physical beings, right? And we're like, okay, cool. There's going to be some differences in this. So we might have to adapt some things for them to be able to do some things. And obviously the, gender differences and all that. Yeah, cool. We're going to have to adapt some things. That's just obvious. But when you can't see it, when it's in the brain, everyone's just like, no, everything needs to be working exactly the same. You're like, wait, hold up, back the trolley up a little bit here. That doesn't make any sense. And how do you suggest people go about providing that help for individuals with say ADHD?
Absolutely. And that is a really important point, because it can be tricky, because the way that ADHD kind of manifests, it can look like character flaws. It can look like we're not listening, we don't care, we're not paying attention, we're lazy. So it is really important to kind of recognize the difference. And some things that help with ADHD is to kind of give us, if we're in a work environment, to kind of give us a separate area without so many distractions. There's this common misconception that ADHD has to do with lack of focus, but we actually have an abundant amount of focus. The problem lies in us being able to direct it appropriately. So if we have constant distractions coming in, it can be difficult for us to maintain focus and emotionally regulate. Another great thing is written instructions and schedules. We thrive in structure as much as we hate it. It's the best ways to deal with symptoms. So if we can have kind of clear parameters about what is required of us, what needs to be done in that day, it can be really helpful, because while we tend to be highly intelligent, we have a lot of abstract ideas swirling around our head, but we struggle to get them down on paper and prioritize correctly. So having some clear structure, some clear, ideas of what needs to happen from us, and then also some clear feedback, because a lot of us deal with some rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria stuff. So we tend to take everything personal. So if we get some feedback, it can be really helpful to, kind of shape us into the person that you want us to be at your company. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense, because a very good mate of mine, and I actually coach him He's got ADHD, right? And I usually take around a whiteboard and write everything on the whiteboard. That's usually for me because I have a fucking shite memory. So I'm like, I can't remember what we're doing. Never mind, like, how old am I? What's my name and where I am. But anyway, like, he always does better when things are written down.
Yeah.
And that's just me in hindsight putting two together and be like, oh wow, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful because I mean, a lot of us, we struggle with the working memory thing, and it has nothing again to do with intelligence at all. There's just like a little bit of a disconnect in our brain. So if we can have another way that that gets reinforced, what's going on, can be really helpful. So the written instructions, a lot of us don't do that the greatest with verbal instructions. So anything that we can have written down and that kind of jogs our memory is really helpful. So it's wonderful.
Is that the reason why? So because it jogs the memory and just kind of reinforces what you need to do?
I'll use this analogy. If you look at your brain and you think of it as having a gate around it, the gate being focused, we kind of need to get past these three barriers to unlock the gate. And one of them needs to be understanding the information, being able to sit still enough to process the information, and then to be able to digest the information. So if we can unlock that gate, which is our learning style to assess the information, it can make things a lot easier. And so few of us have that auditory learning style that things like the visual or the kinesthetic, and I mean, I think there's like 9 different ones now, but if we can figure out which one works, we are much more likely to get that into our long-term memories.
So it's all about processing it to getting into the long-term memory.
So for me, it's like, in order to process information and get it into my long-term, I kind of have to retell it to myself. So if I'm doing something important that I need to remember, I will go on a walk after and kind of tell myself that story again to remember it. And yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Well, I mean, it can be time consuming to be us, right? You know, when you have those really important things, like if I'm actually doing the, academic style stuff, that's definitely how I go about processing it. And it really works in the long run.
Yeah, I'm super jealous of people with like eidetic or photographic memories.
I know. I think about that all the time because I feel like I've been studying, my whole life, and there's a lot of scientific and medical jargon that goes into it. And I am just so jealous of those people that can recall things on command. So,
it's crazy. I literally have like blotches of memory. Like I'll think back and I'm like, oh, I know like kind of one part of the morning, and other than that, everything else is just blank. Like it's quite weird. But hey, we all have a set of cards to play.
Sure. Yeah, we call that mind blanking in ADHD. I mean, I look back and there's just huge chunks of my life that I have no memory of at all, really. Or, just times when I'm trying to think of what I did the day before. And if I haven't taken the time to kind of digest and reflect, it just doesn't stick in there at all. So, yeah.
It's crazy, right? That's why I got to write everything down.
Yes, exactly.
Just post-it notes everywhere. You're like,
That's a big ADHD hack, having the post-it notes and stuff around, but we tend to kind of reject, structure and organization. So until we get into the practice of doing that, we tend to hate it and reject it. So people with ADHD tend to be either just kind of really untreated and kind of messy and disorganized, or highly functioning, highly structured, because they've learned to put these habits into practice in their daily lives.
What I've noticed is, right, and part of my ignorance on this, is everyone I've ever met with ADHD, whether they knew it at the time or have then come back and we've had a conversation and be like, oh, you know what, bro? Like, I found out I had ADHD. I was like, oh, shit, cool. In their 30s or late 20s or whatever. Like, they are super fucking hardworking and usually super smart in a specific area. Like, insanely fucking smart. You're like, wait, hold on a minute. Like, we'll say traditionally you're kind of labeled as disruptive or lazy or any of these labels, right? Which is obviously bullshit. And then you turn around and you're like, wait, how do you know this? Like, how did you build this in the space of 12 hours? You're like, oh, well, I don't know. I just kind of got to work. I was like, holy shit.
That's the paradigm and the ADHD curse, right? Because we do tend to be highly intelligent and we have this hyper focus. So when we can direct that appropriately, I mean, we're incredible and we can get so much done. But because of that, we also have this propensity to burn out, and we burn out hard. So we'll have a day where we hyper focus and we are incredible, but then we need like a few days to recover after. So we really struggle with finding that balance. And as we get older, our symptoms get, a bit more hectic. and the burnout increases. And it's really hard to just kind of, maintain a good quality of life when you're constantly switching back and forth between hyperfocus and resting and the constant panic and shame that goes on with the procrastinating and waiting till the last minute. So, I mean, the whole thing with ADHD really comes down to being able to emotionally regulate. And many of us just really struggle with that. So finding that balance in emotionally regulating. Yeah.
That's a really, really important point of hyperfocus and then burnout. Like, even if you're not diagnosed as ADHD or have ADHD, right? People fall into that trap of like, oh, I'm going to hustle so hard and smack my face against a brick wall, and then tomorrow you are absolutely goosed.
Yeah.
What are some of the sort of techniques or anything that you would advise for an individual who has ADHD who usually does that kind of yo-yo pattern?
Sure. So, I mean, at the core of ADHD is just emotional dysregulation. So I recommend for people at the very early stages, because usually it takes a minute for people to kind of accept that they might have it, go to get testing, seek out a psychiatrist, get therapy, coaching, etc. So if they just want to start immediately doing something that will help, I always recommend go to mindfulness and exercise, because you want to regulate your nervous system, because ours is just fucked, to be honest, because we are constantly, our cortisol levels are shot up, our stress is everywhere, we're constantly up and down, up and down. And over time that leads to, chronic illness and all sorts of problems. So the key is to start emotionally regulating and calming your nervous system. So to do that, especially if you want to manage these things naturally, doing exercise every day if you can, and some sort of mindfulness. And while many of us struggle with the, actual seated still meditation, anything where you can sort of get into the flow state is really going to help in building up that gray matter in your brain.
I fucking love that you said that, because this entire, vision of this thing that we're doing right now, creating a space and have a conversation, i.e. a podcast, is bridging the gap between mental and physical health, right? And that's just shown that it doesn't matter where you are and what you are or who you are or what you have or anything, whatever cards you're dealt. Like, okay, you got ADHD, okay, you got anxiety, okay, you whatever, right? It's like, yeah, we still need to look after physical and mental health. And there's gonna have to change, right? Like law of individuality, like things are gonna have to change for the individual. That's fine. But at the end of the day, like, you've got a mind, that's health. You got a body, that's health. We kind of need to work in unison rather than work against each other.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So something I'm super, super interested in is ADHD in kids, right? Because that's one of my, I've not done it for a while, but it's one of my kind of specialties, quote unquote, is coaching kids, right? And usually you get like either a misdiagnosis or an undiagnosis or any of these things, right? And you get a kid that's just a dickhead, and that's just environmental or whatever, and he's been having all these labels. Or you get this kid that has 0 labels, and you're like, whoa, hold on a minute, like there's definitely something going on here, and this could probably help him or her a lot more, right? Wow. So how do you tackle that? Because that's really, really difficult.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's important to remember not all people with ADHD present in the hyperactive way, right? So first you want to make sure that you're paying attention to all the different, ways that presents. And sometimes, and especially young girls, they present really quietly and well behaved. But when you're working with children, that guilt and shame factor, it starts really young with ADHD, because we start getting told that, we're misbehaving, we're loud, we're disruptive, we're this and we're that. And we start this kind of chain reaction of underachievement. And so it's really important to work on building in those self-esteem skills and those emotional regulation skills very early. So we want to explain to our children what is going on with them. We want to make them autonomous, but we also want to really focus on building up their self-esteem and finding things they're good at and giving them an outlet that way. Because at the core, if you can help them emotionally regulate and have those self-esteem skills, they will be able to thrive later on in life. So I would focus on trying to find something that they're good at so that they have an outlet there. I worked with children on the autism spectrum, or with Aspersers, for a number of years. And a few of the ones I worked with were really good at chess. So they had a lot of social skills and they were disruptive in class and they weren't getting along. So I would help them, get into these chess clubs where they would have this kind of outlet where they would, meet people and thrive and be able to have these intense conversations that we're dying to have with people. And it made a big difference in their lives. And it helps them kind of regulate having that outlet just to, communicate and have peer support on some level.
You're a fucking legend for saying that. Like, chess it's really weird. This might blow someone's mind. No, the cat is definitely getting jealous. Is that's a tool I use in the gym. Okay, you're going to come in for 2 sessions a week, and usually they're the problem, quote unquote, child, right? And a lot of the time they don't have a male figure around. So then, I come from a bit of a rough area, so usually the kids that you're knocking around with and helping come from similar places, and the male role models they look up to usually aren't the best ones. So one of them is like, okay, cool, we're going to throw things around, we're going to go super like hyperactive, you're going to get all the physical energy out, and then the second session, oh, you're going to sit down, we're going to play chess. We're going to play chess. What the fuck are you on about, mate? Like, I'm not playing chess. Like, get fucked. I'm like, yes, you're going to play chess, and we're going to it's going to teach you what these do and how to actually sit in that space and think, yeah, okay, play the game, but also calm yourself in a non-physical environment and a very like intellectually stimulating.
Wow, that's really interesting. How does that go for you? I'm wondering how long it takes them to kind of get comfortable in that atmosphere, sitting still and focusing on a new strategic way of doing things.
It depends on the individual. Like, yeah. I had one guy here who had like ADHD. He had literally, I spoke to his mum, and she basically listed off the alphabet to me. I was like, oh my God, okay.
Yeah.
It's like, is this kid like just dealt some wacky hands, or have you just been like, no, this is it? And when you dig a little bit deeper, right? Yeah, there was definitely some things there, like Tourette's, physical and verbal tics, ADHD, definitely. But he also smoked a shitload of weed, and he was like 13, 14. And I'm like, okay, it's probably not going to help you, mate. Like, but let's work with this. ADD, which I don't think he had. It was more just lack of discipline and all that type of stuff. But it took not that long, to be fair, simply because our backgrounds were very similar, so we related on a different level.
Yeah.
Right. And then it was like, okay, cool. Like, if I'm able to kind of offer you an olive branch and earn that respect, i.e., I'm the coach, I've earned the respect. You're not earning my respect, right? You've walked through the fucking door and you're listening to what I've got to say. I respect you.
Yeah.
Right. I've got to earn your respect. You've got to end up trusting me. So I ended up getting that, honorably, and it's super appreciative for that. And then it was like, okay, cool. What do you mean we're going to play chess? Yeah, man, we're going to go to the local library because it's free. And we're going to these chess boards, which is free. And we're going to sit down and we're going to play a bit of chess. So it's hard. Some kids end up fucking throwing the board and walking off, and they're like, no, I'm not doing this. And you kind of get that stiff upper lip. It's difficult if you get them around. For dudes, it's like 13 to 16, I would say, is really difficult because they're usually in the macho mindset. I want to just go punch everything and all that type of stuff. Want to go look at girls. You're like, oh, okay, let's this is different. But if you get them a little bit younger, it's a little bit easier. Yeah,
that makes sense. And I think at the core of what you're saying there has a lot to do with the peer component of things, which is really, really important. I run a program for people with ADHD, and a big part of that is having the peer support factor, because I think, while you can learn with therapy is so helpful and you can learn so much there, having that, someone on your level to run things by and to normalize things, it's so incredibly important. So I think it's really wonderful what you're doing there.
Thank you. Like, chess I was taught it at an early-ish age, but I didn't play it for a long time. And then I just kind of, you open your eyes and see what everybody else is doing, these private and grammar schools. You're like, oh, okay, well, they're creating some pretty intellectual people. We should probably copy what they're doing, right? So you just kind of take those philosophies and then put it in the so-called ghetto, right? i.e. back home. I'm like, right, well, let's see if this actually works. Because a lot of people are just tired with this brush, and I don't think it's fair writing off a human being at fucking 12. What? Because you gave them like 4 letters, right? I mean, like that's not on. Like, we've all got limitations, and I'm a big advocate for self-work, i.e. figuring out who the fuck you are, and then like figuring out your own limitations and working with them so they serve you rather than working against them and then they hinder you, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we we do that for them as kids. We just tar them with that brush, and not everyone has the tenacity and the resilience to kind of pull through as an adult. Like a lot of people, you know, they get to 40, 50, 60, 70, or even the ground where they're like, oh, well, you know, this is just kind of who I am. I was like, no, man, like you can be whoever the fuck you want to be. You just got to realize the cards in your hand.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to kind of, get people the services they need at a young age. So they're not spending these giant chunks of their adult lives kind of, getting rid of all the negative beliefs they've formed and the shame, the low self-esteem. It takes years and years to sort through that. So if we can help them early on to have these kind of skills and build up their self-esteem, it makes such a difference in the long run.
And then, this might be a bit of a left field point. I might ruffle some feathers, but it comes from a good place. Then they integrate into society better, right? So then there's less clash, and then they're less cast out. And on a fucking humanity level, they're just nicer to human beings, and everyone kind of knows who they are, and they know how to interact with other people. And there's going to be less conflict, which would be really nice in the world. Less conflict would be great, rather than everyone wants to throw sticks and stones, but we don't realize we're living in glass houses.
Sure, completely agree.
Oh, wow. Okay. Have you worked with any schools?
Well, years ago, I worked in the classroom for children with ADHD and autism, but it's been like 15 years probably since then. But I think in the last 10 years, research around neurodevelopmental disorders has really, gotten so much better. So while things in the school system, I think, are getting better, IEPs are getting better, reasonable accommodations are getting better, there's still a long way to go. I live in Bali most of the year, and most of the schools there integrate some sort of mindfulness component throughout the day, even at a quite young age. And that's, I could see the difference in these kind of, these kids and these Montessori school kids that have those emotional regulation skills just built in, because when it's done that young, it just becomes second nature in their adult life. So
what's the number one religion over there? Is it Buddhism?
Muslim, I believe.
Oh,
yeah.
That's amazing that they've integrated like mindfulness and emotional regulation into like kids.
It's wonderful. And since there's so much nature there, obviously that's kind of a green school. They add in that component. There's a lot of kinesthetic hands-on things happening there. And these kids just seem really well adjusted. Like I have friends out there whose kids are going off to college, and, they're all doing these amazing international relations things. And they just seem like really well-rounded individuals. And I think it comes from having a lot of mindfulness and time spent in nature while they're developing.
Yeah, that's it, right? You're building whole humans rather than, or nurturing the growth of whole humans. Like, there's a lot of responsibility on the individual, but instead of on the Western side, and again, I'm tiring everyone with the same brush here of, you have to be between these two lines, right? And this is it. This is all you've got. And if you're not, you're an outcast. You can get fucked. You're going to be a drain on society. You're like, that works in the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
That works in fucking war, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully we're not in a war at the moment, and we're not. We're in the time of something called the Great Peace. It's supposed to be the most peaceful time on the planet. People can argue with that, fine. But like, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to build soldiers, or are we trying to build human beings? Because if you build humans, we're going to create connection. We're going to cause growth. If we're going to cause soldiers, what happens? If you're a one-dimensional individual, then you can only ever do one thing.
Sure. Yeah, it's important to embrace those differences, especially as we evolve as a society. You also mentioned earlier, when you were talking about working with children with chest capacity in your outreach, the marijuana use and addiction. And that's a really important thing to bring up when you're talking to people with ADHD, because we have this giant propensity towards addiction as a way of, emotionally regulating and self-soothing and just kind of treating our symptoms. So it's really important to kind of get that information out there so that people with ADHD are aware that they are kind of predisposed to use illicit substances or alcohol as a means to regulate.
So talk to me about addiction and go down that rabbit hole a bit more. Like I'm really interested.
So there's some things that kind of go hand in hand with ADHD, some negative things. That's usually food issues, binge eating a lot of, compulsive gambling or shopping, all the process addictions. And then, using illicit substances. There's a big link with ADHD and, methamphetamine use, because really at the core, people are trying to treat their symptoms. And, because there's so much stigma around ADHD, excuse me, and some people, still don't believe it's real or think it's poor parenting, people aren't getting the appropriate help they need. So they're seeking out ways to treat themselves intuitively, which oftentimes comes with drugs or other, not helpful things.
Have you found marijuana to help ADHD, or does it hinder it?
I don't know much about marijuana in the link. I've seen people use alcohol as a means to self-regulate. I'm fairly forward in the way of plant medicine. I follow the psilocybin trials, and I think that has a lot of promise. But mostly, I see people self-medicating for ADHD through amphetamines or cocaine or things that have a very similar chemical compound to things like Ritalin or Concerta.
So like pharmaceutical rather than like herbal.
Yes.
That to me doesn't make any sense. Like I don't really personally, I reserve the right to not have an opinion on marijuana.
Sure.
Like I stand on one side and I stand on the other. So I'm like, if it's illegal, don't do it. Like I think it should be, taxed and regulated and create jobs and help the economy and help decrease poverty and all that type of stuff. But also I'm really fascinated of like, okay, cool. Like obviously it's a weed, it's a plant. But if we can use this to help people, well, why aren't we? It doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm really intrigued in that side of medicine, of the herbal side, that Eastern style, so to speak, of using the earth rather than just grinding up a powder and be like, here you go.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I don't know why that tends to get boxed off to the side, because everyone responds to different ways of treatment and medication differently. Some people like instant release, some type of like extended, some like non-stimulant. It's the same with trying different forms of treatment through plant medicines, etc. So I think that should be up to the individual to choose their treatment and have accessibility to that.
For sure. Two different pathways, right? Do you want to go down this way? Do you want to go down that way? And they should be both accessible. I'd be really interested to see like just CBD, see if that helped. Because I think that thing is legitimately wicked. Like it's insane.
I've heard a lot of promise. It's still illegal in Bali, so I don't have a lot of experience with it. But I've heard a lot of colleagues that work in the industry talking about the benefits of CBD. So I think that is a really interesting thing to follow.
Yeah, I had it's legal back home in the UK. Obviously, marijuana is illegal, but CBD and the oils and sprays and all that shit, you can buy them in like a Holland & Barrett or a pharmacy or whatever on the high street. And I gave it a go because at the time I was really struggling with like insomnia, like really badly. To be fair, I was stressed out to my fucking balls. Like I was doing like 4 jobs. I was, you environmentally, you're in a bad place, as well as mentally you're in a bad place. And I'm like, I'm not sleeping yet. I'm sleeping like 3-4 hours. And this is just digging me a deeper and deeper hole to chuck myself in. Right. And I'm like, right, okay, cool. Let's try this out. And it's the only thing that has ever worked for me that has sent me to sleep is CBD. And then my joints felt better. I was like a lot more relaxed. I had less anxiety. Like I think it's fucking brilliant. So I'd really be interested to see any studies done on like ADHD with CBD.
Absolutely. I mean, it's incredible that you found something that works for you, because that can be really challenging. So well done.
Oh, thank you. It was on sale. So I was like, you know what? If there's any time I'm going to try it, it's going to be when I'm saving a book. So let's go. Yeah, it's great.
It's been amazing. I mean, I was back in America in June, and that's the first time I've been back since marijuana was legalized here. So I went to, go see one of these stores to see what it was like. And it's just incredible. It's like going to a Target, then there's people that help you and everything. And this last time I'm visiting now also, I was seeing signs for CBD at every gas station. So it's just everywhere. So it seems to be the way of the future.
Yeah, I think so, and even like building materials with hemp.
Yeah.
Right. Like just being a little bit more progressive in the mindset, having a bit more of a growth-minded outlook. It doesn't have to just be on the whole drug scene. It can be in anything, but I think if it starts there, then you can start to dismantle the conservative way of thinking. I'll be like, nope, this has worked for the past 150 years. So this will work for the next 150. I'm like, you're not going to be around for the next 5 years, grandpa, never mind 150. Like, come on, and if we're just creating these, like I said before, one-dimensional human beings, like we're fucked, man. We're just spinning We're just like walking on a treadmill rather than walking forwards.
Yeah, I agree.
So Asperger's. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Well, there's a lot of similarities there between Asperger's and ADHD. A lot of it has to do with, lacking social awareness. So a lot of when I worked with children with Asperger's, it was kind of teaching them how to pick up on social cues, which is very common to things with people with ADHD. So there's issues like, eye contact, how much do you make, how little do you make, how do you say hello and so somebody that you're interested in when they're talking, just little things like that.
Here's a left field point
Yeah.
of someone who struggles with social cues.
Yeah.
Usually male, interacting towards a female.
Okay.
Like, how would you navigate into try and teach that individual? Because most of the time it can come across like seriously fucking creepy.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be one to give dating advice. I am 36 and very much single and happily so. But I can tell you that I would, use eye contact to show interest, not give too much, things like that, and ask a lot of questions and show interest that way.
It's definitely a weird one to navigate, right, with these social cues, because it's like you can't really write it down and kind of show them. It's like everything's by feel. And if the way you feel things is a little bit different, and it's like, it's real hard.
And there's kind of that line too between how much do you want to, because it's basically masking your actual authentic self, right? So how much do you want to portray this version of yourself into the world where you can kind of get along with neurotypicals, and how much do you want to honor yourself and unmask? For me, I don't like making eye contact. I do it, but I can't think and make eye contact at the same time. So that was something I learned really early, to show interests, etc. So, and because of that, you get a bit burned out by the end of the day. Being social can be a bit exhausting. So it's really important to learn how to unmask and not do those things. So there's really kind of that fine line between how much you want to fit into the world and how much you want to be your authentic self.
I love how you say neurotypical. It makes everyone sound like a muggle. It's like those damn muggles.
Well, I feel like it's better than calling someone like a normie, because I feel like that makes it sound more like we are not normal, and everyone is normal and beautiful and amazing in their own way. So
I think this is a good point of like people thinking normal and crazy and all that stuff. I'm like, we're all crazy, man.
Yes.
Like, if you were able to 100% dissect someone, obviously without killing them, and understand what's going on in their head and hear that internal voice or see that internal figure or feel exactly what they're feeling, every single person on the planet will be labeled as insane.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, we just kind of learn to, deal with it, get around it, work within this weird thing that we call society, find our little pathway and our people and kind of work with that.
Well, I think I worked, when I worked in addiction, there was always a clear divide between, identifying as an alcoholic or addict and then, being a regular person. And I think when you start to like really, really identify with being, ADHD or alcoholic or addict, you kind of limit yourself. You can heal, you can thrive, you can do these things. So I don't want to put, these big neurotypical, neurodiverse labels on things necessarily, but just in explaining how we work differently. And I also want to promote kind of embracing our differences. So
I couldn't agree more. If you put yourself in this box, like I have the conversation on the whole mental health side, I'm like, okay, cool. If you say you have depression, right? You like put yourself in this box and you can only ever go to the four corners of this box and you can't get out of it. Or if it's like, I'm experiencing depression, right? Or I have a tendency to go into depressive states. So they're just the way you kind of either think about it or speak about it, right? Kind of putting it out into the world. Like it's so freeing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting, like, the more you focus on these labels, the more you kind of manifest it, I guess, into the world because it's at the forefront of your mind. And, just since I went into private practice, and so my big focus has been ADHD, and it's, takes up a lot of my time. I'm seeing things in the world more through my ADHD lens, because when I, interact socially or with my family, I'm not thinking about my ADHD generally. They don't necessarily know I have it. I talk about it sometimes, but it's not a big deal. But now that I'm kind of in this ADHD zone all the time, I'm noticing like everything I do, oh, that's an ADD thing, that's an ADD thing. And so I think whatever you can put at the forefront of your mind is your general focus. So yeah, I don't believe necessarily take on that label of addict, alcoholic, ADHD, depressed, whatever. Just, just kind of live your best life.
It's like walking through life with, those sunglasses that give like an orange tint.
Yeah.
It's like always wearing those glasses for the rest of your life. Right? Everything's going to look orange.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? And that's like basically just describing the core of cognitive behavioral therapy. We all view our world through these lenses of our childhood experiences, how we've interacted in the world. And because of that, we're really biased on how we interpret events. So it's really important to kind of become aware of those biases, whether it's black and white thinking or overgeneralizing or using should statements. There's a bunch of different ones that you kind of use. But when you can go into therapy to look at those things and remove those biases, it can kind of be really, really freeing in a way, because if you have a propensity to view the world in a negative lens or to disqualify the positives, it can be really detrimental to your well-being. So when you become aware of these lenses that you're using every day and you can take them off, it's really liberating.
So in a nutshell, what is CBT if you were going to describe it to like a 3-year-old?
Yeah, it's the way you view the world. It's the lenses through which you view the world. It's exactly that. It's your experiences and how they've shaped your world. So CBT is breaking that down so you can view the world with fresh eyes.
Wow. Fuck.
It's great. I recommend it for everyone. That was the one thing, because, growing up, ADHD, especially in young women, it's constantly misdiagnosed. I mean, and again, it wasn't until 10 years ago that it was really recognized in adults. So I was misdiagnosed with anxiety, depression. I had issues with, the binge eating that comes along with it. I had addiction issues when I was younger, things like that. And I've lost my train of thought here, but yeah, so it gets, sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there. Right. Yeah.
I had a point too. Hold on. it will come back. Let me go fishing for it. This is the point. So when you were diagnosed with like mental health issues, right? Anxiety, depression as a kid, did they medicate you?
Yeah, I think when I first started taking medication, I was probably 14, and that I think I started with Prozac, and I went through various anti-anxiety and depression meds, and it wasn't until my early 30s that I was properly diagnosed with ADHD and took ADHD medicine. I don't tolerate the side effects well. So, and I'm based in Indonesia, so there's not a lot of options there. If I was based in America, I would have switched to the non-stimulant form of medications. But because I'm in Indonesia where those are not available, I go med free. So that seems to work for me. But because of that, I have to do a lot of exercise and mindfulness to kind of balance out my nervous system naturally.
Wow. Yeah. See, that poses a lot of issues, right? So a mixed diagnosis as a kid, and then you medicating a child. Right?
Yes.
Putting pharmaceutical into a child, a developing child that doesn't have quote unquote anything like wrong with them that they needed this medicine. And you're like, whoa, hold on a minute. That's gonna have some fucking side effects here, guys. Like, it's probably not a good idea.
It's tricky though, right? And I'm a big advocate of ending pill shaming, et cetera. But I understand in children, it can be really tricky, and it's hard for them to articulate what's going on with them. So it can be really difficult for a psychiatrist to get in there and, diagnose them correctly and give the appropriate meds. So yes, but I am going to opt out of talking about that too much.
No, that's all right. I mean, I'm very much on the stance of do whatever the fuck you want to do.
Yes, exactly. Like, I love that.
I honestly don't care. Like, do whatever you want to do. Like, if it's going to help you, fucking fantastic, right? Like, go do that. You don't want to come in the gym, you want to go do Zumba, great. You want to, like, I don't know, meditate on your head for 12 hours a day and it makes you a functioning member and you're fantastic for your family and friends, great. Go do that. Like, what have I have no leg to stand on to tell you how to live your life, and vice versa, right? The only, I come back to the same quote, and I wrote it down a while ago now. It's life's a game, right? Figure out the rules you want to play the game by, and don't expect anybody else to play by the same rules. Period. That's life. Like,
yeah.
And yeah, if people want to do this, go do it. People don't. Like, it's really that simple, right?
I agree.
Wow. So, but med free now.
Yes,
So
completely.
So you said you have to be really, really careful and train and do the mindfulness. So what does that look like?
Well, for me, because the biggest thing for me when getting into kind of the physical fitness stuff was finding something I enjoyed, right? Because I grew up and I played basketball and I did sports and stuff. I'm very tall. So, and I hated it. I hated having to run on a treadmill. I hated being inside the gym. It's not my thing. But when I discovered things like Muay Thai, F45, just things that were more me, finding dance classes, things like that, when I started actually enjoying it, I was able to be consistent with it and then really see the benefits in my life. And as far as it went for emotionally regulating me.
Wow. Yeah. And then your mindfulness, like how'd you end up navigating that space?
I go through big phases with that. I'm ADD, so I cycle through hobbies and various other things, but sitting still is not my favorite thing to do. So I prefer chanting meditations, walking meditations, different breathing exercises, things that don't necessarily involve me actively. Well, I guess actively is not the right word, but trying to kind of sit still and clear my mind or observe thoughts. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I on the mindfulness more than meditation, and whether that be just journaling and something where I'm getting into the flow state and regulating myself.
Well, meditation can come in many ways, right? You don't have to just sit there with your kind of fingers like this and go it can kind of come in many states. And I think for me personally, going to the gym can be meditative.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's the first thing I always say to clients when I'm working with them, because ADHDers, especially, like the thought of having to sit still and kind of is just horrific. But anything that you're getting into kind of the flow state with is going to do wonders for you and for your brain.
Yeah, flow state. That's definitely something that I would recommend to everyone. They just try, right? If it doesn't work, don't do it. Like whatever. But kind of pick your poison. Even for people that are, what was the term that you used? The muggles?
Neurotypicals or
neurotypical?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even people who are neurotypical, right? Like just you need that break. Like the world is getting faster and faster and faster and faster, and like stress is going up, anxiety is going up. Yeah, everyone's contactable all the fucking time, right? We wake up in the morning and what's the first thing you do? You check your phone. Right. And you're like, whoa, hold on a minute. Like you're allowing the world to dictate your brain before you've had a chance to even wake up. Right. Absolutely. Figure out how you want to play it today. Right. Well, okay, cool. I'm more tired today. Okay, cool. I'm a little bit more like agitative today. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to have to, take a little bit of a break, and, the way I portray myself to some people might have to change. I think that mindfulness and reaching that flow state in whatever way, whatever capacity helps you. Going for a walk, sitting still, writing, journaling, arts, like whatever it is, like it's so important for all of us because we're human beings. We feel.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. It's really important to start your day off right and have that appropriate morning routine instead of just diving into your phone. I noticed just the biggest difference in my life, just after I've gone into private practice, and a lot of my work is done via Instagram. So, your phone is just constantly full of notifications, and it's a lot. Yeah. So I've had to be really conscious of, not sleeping with it in the same room, starting my day off how I do, which is, coffee and silence. And I usually go for a walk on the beach and I do some sort of exercise, and then I'm into the right headspace to start my day. And it makes a giant difference. And just having that structure and, that act of self-love towards yourself makes a big difference in your life.
Yeah, it really, really, really does. Like everyone that works with me, I set them a task, and that's their morning routine. And you can do it in 15 minutes if you really wanted to rush it, but it's between 15 and 30 minutes of you waking up. And yeah, the main thing is you don't look at your phone for the entire time, and you've got a couple of tasks to do just as distractions, and you can start thinking about these things a little bit more actively rather than it just being passive. But it's super important to nail that morning. Like I have to get up and read, I have to do at least 4 pages, because reading's not my forte. Like I'm pretty fucking dyslexic. I have to like read the same line multiple times and break it down. But it's kind of like starting off as a win. Like if I'm able to get through 4 pages, I'm like, well, I've won the day. And it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever time it is. I'm like, I've won, because everything else could go to shit. But I've like, whatever I've been dealt as nature, as not the best of readers. I've ended up slapping that in the face and be like, no, you're not going to beat me today.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's that. But I think, that's my way. Your way is the beach. I would love to do that. Well, I'm like 20-minute drive, 15 maybe.
Well, that's the thing though, right? Finding something that works for you and works in your life, because it is very, very different from person to person. I recently started working with somebody in Croatia, and ADHD, from what they're understanding, it doesn't even exist there yet. So really, you really have to put a lot of effort into trial and error and finding what works for you and in your location, and etc.
Yeah, a lot of countries in the world still don't recognize this, do they?
No, it's just bad parenting or things like that.
Holy shit. That must be a really difficult space to navigate through as the individual with ADHD.
Absolutely. It's incredibly shaming and, reductive to our whole human experience, because and I get it. It's a lot of our, our traits, they mirror, poor character flaws, I guess, if you want to say it like that. So it can be really challenging for people that don't have it to understand, which is why it is so important for us ADHDers to kind of have our support system and find either friends that have it or online groups, and have that peer component to kind of normalize what's going on and validate your experience.
Well, my mind's blown, boss.
Good. I'm glad you learned some things, I hope.
I really appreciate it. I like to end with the same 3 questions, if that's okay.
Sure. What do you got?
So number 1 is, what's the greatest piece of life advice you've ever received?
Greatest piece of life advice I ever received. I don't have necessarily a quote, but the best thing that I ever learned from someone was to practice things in balance, and that's made all the difference, trying to kind of find some consistency and some balance in my life, because as an ADHD, it is so easy to get, cycle through these intense hobbies or change careers constantly. And just trying to find that like work, life, social balance has been so helpful, and keeping that at the forefront of my mind.
Yin yang, right?
Yes. There you go.
What's the worst piece of life advice you've ever received?
Just do it is probably the worst advice I have ever received.
Cheers,
no.
Nike.
Yeah, don't do that. Pause, reflect, respond appropriately, and do what works best for you. Never just do anything.
Phil Knight, you're the problem with this. No, I'm joking. I'll get cancelled. Last one is 3 words you would tell your younger self.
You are enough.
Ooh.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said earlier, there's so much shame and guilt that comes with ADHD. And, I grew up in a very kind of academic, high standards family. And so it was really challenging now trying to navigate that without getting my diagnosis and not knowing what was going on or why I couldn't, live up to the potential or do these things that the people around me were doing. So yeah, just knowing that I'm enough and I will figure it out. I would love to be able to tell my younger self that.
Wow, that's powerful. It's actually quite scary how many people answer that last question with "you are enough."
Yeah, like that.
It shows we're lacking some things for kids.
Absolutely.
I guess it's down to you and I to fix it, right?
Go for it.
All right. I appreciate you so much, and I appreciate what you're doing, and yeah, if you ever need a little bit of a holiday from Bali, I guess, even though living there is going to be a holiday, just hop over the pond and where you are, we can grab a coffee.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me on, and same to you. If you ever want to come to Bali, I got a spot for you.
Oh, I'll be over there in a jiffy.
All right then, Alex.
All right, boss. See you later. Have a good
See
day.
ya.